Hello, estamos muy felices. We are very happy. We are celebrating a great, wonderful, childlike and philosophical life, 100 years. Estamos muy felices. Vamos a celebrar 100 años de una vida infantil, filosófica, extraordinaria. La vida de Matthew Lipman, Matthew Lipman's life. I am Walter Cohen from Argentina, Brazil, and I have a question. How does a celebration begin? Soy Walter Cohen de Argentina, Brasil, y tengo una pregunta. ¿Cómo comienza una celebración?
Hola a todos y todas, acá Carmina Yapiro de Argentina, y mi pregunta es, ¿qué es un legado?
Oi a todos e todas. Eu sou Daniel Gaivota, do Brasil, mas falo da Itália. I'm Daniel Gaivota. I'm from Brazil. I'm speaking from Italy. And my question is thinking together always a work of translation? A minha pergunta é, se pensar juntos é sempre um trabalho de tradução?
Olá a todas as pessoas, o meu nome é Magda e falo-vos dos Açores, mais especificamente da Ilha do Faial, em Portugal, e a minha pergunta é: o que é que nos traz a um aniversário? Hello, my name is Magda. I am talking to you from the Azorian Island, particularly from Faial Island, and my question today is: what brings us to an anniversary?
Ciao.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go, Marina.
no? Hi, ciao, buongiorno a tutti o buonasera. Io sono Marina Santi e vengo dall'Italia e mi domando cos'è un compleanno? I wonder what is a birthday?
I am Mon Gregory. I'm coming to you from New Jersey in the United States of America. And my question is, why do human beings need ritual?
Hi, everyone. I'm Roseanne Reynolds from Cape Town, South Africa. And my question is, what does it mean to celebrate a beautiful life?
Oh, shall we begin, Felipe? Shall we begin?
Está a chover lá. Está a chover lá fora e eu aqui dentro da. Quero jogar a bola, mas não.
É o Matthew Lipman. Matthew Lipman. É o Matthew Lipman. Matthew Lipman. Matthew Lipman. É essa criança. O Matthew Lipman. 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 gostava de inventar coisas como uma mochila jato com tranete.
Está a chover lá fora e eu aqui dentro da... Quero jogar
Matthew Lipman estava a pensar em perguntas. Ele não sabia nenhuma e leu um livro e encontrou montes delas. Como é que as árvores se fazem? Em imaginação. Como é que eu gosto tanto de mim? Como é que eu gosto tanto de fazer perguntas? Como é que a trovoada não vai parar? O que é aquilo formar? Será que o Pai Natal existe?
Por que não juntar a filosofia com crianças?
Está a chover lá.
Lipman era uma pessoa que tinha o cabelo verde porque passava a vida a fazer perguntas. E fez tantas perguntas que ficou diferente.
Quero jogar a bola, mas não dá. Porque está...
Nós fizemos aqui um mito para representar as crianças que não estavam presentes neste momento.
Olá, Matthew Lipman. Nós fizemos uma homenagem. Nós desejamos 100 anos por causa dos teus anos. Feliz aniversário.
My name is Ümete Küçük. I've been teaching philosophy at a high school in Istanbul, Turkey. I'm the current board member of the Sofia European Foundation for the Advancement of Doing Philosophy with Children. I also continue researching and writing articles about philosophy for children. I had the pleasure of meeting Matthew Lipman at Mandam in 2000. At that time, I was a PhD student in Turkey, and we talked about the possibility of writing a PhD thesis about philosophy for children. It was a very interesting philosophical conversation. He also suggested many references. In 2003, I finished my PhD degree in philosophy and started teaching philosophy in schools. In 2006, I was awarded an IIPC grant for attending an advanced philosophy for children seminar in Mandam. When I arrived there, I first visited Matthew Lipman at the Elder Care Center. I was very happy to see him after 6 years, but he was ill. He wasn't able to speak with me, but he listened to me carefully. I told him what I had done about philosophy for children in Turkey since 2000. I understood that he remembered me and my words made him happy. Then I joined the P4C Advanced Seminar. I had a very productive time there. I learned a lot from Ansharp, Alman, Gregory. Before I left, I had a surprise. Matthew Lipman came to visit us. I was so lucky that I had another chance to meet him again. I've spent some time with him and he signed his books for me. I'm really glad to have met this precious person and his ideas. I believe that we should give children the hope of bringing to life Socrates' claim that the examined life is indeed worth living. Then, as Lipman said, philosophy for children will build a better and more reasonable world for our children. Thank you so much for everything he did for children, parents, and teachers around the world.
Desde la Leonera, Colombia, saludamos a Matthew Lipman, profesor que ha permitido
pensar en la escuela.
Gracias por creer en la iglesia.
Hola, me han pedido que diga unas palabras en recuerdo de Matthew Lipman, porque se está celebrando el centenario de su nacimiento y quiero efectivamente conmemorar esa presencia porque Matthew Lipman fue una persona que influyó en mi vida. Le conocí en 1983, le invité a España a un congreso, asistí a un seminario suyo en aquel congreso. Me pareció una propuesta educativa muy sugerente para enseñar filosofía y decidí pedir una beca para estar con él y fui con toda mi familia a New Jersey, a Núcleo, y estuve 10 meses estudiando con él y también con Ansar, que es muy importante en el trabajo de Matthew Lipman. Y tras esos 10 meses, a la vuelta a España, decidí iniciar el proceso de fundación y creación de un centro de filosofía para niños. Invité a Matthew Lipman en más ocasiones para que viniera a España y siempre, en todos los momentos, estuvo dispuesto a colaborar. Con él fui también yo a Montclair en otras ocasiones, nos encontramos en congresos internacionales y es desde luego una figura de una calidad humana y personal e intelectual extraordinaria que hizo posible que yo le conociera, que fundara un centro que sea para niños y que en estos momentos en España y en más partes del mundo ya hay una presencia valiosa, sugerente y transformadora de la filosofía para niños en la educación.
That is so strange.
Yeah, they have these things called concepts here.
Isn't that the squishy thing I stepped in earlier?
No, look! It's the stuff that they use to make questions with.
Ooh. Good thing we have this Lipman human, or wouldn't we be a little bit lost about everything on Earth?
Yeah. He was a cool Earthling. I wish we had one of those on our planet.
I love this philosopher. Philosophy.
Ooh, yeah.
He even cared about what the littlest of humans thought about these concepts.
Aww. What concepts are in this rectangle?
Justice?
Mystery.
Friendship.
Ooh. But wait. Are we friends?
I don't know. What's a friend for you?
Let's go find some little humans and ask them.
Oh yes, they have the best answers.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Roger Sutcliffe from the UK and France. I've been a P4C enthusiast for over 30 years, and it's about that time ago that I met Matthew Lipman for the first time. And I've been wondering on this occasion where he might find a place in the pantheon of great philosophers of education. So I checked it out as you would on Google, and to my dismay, I discovered that he doesn't come in the top 30 and possibly not even in the top 50 of those on that list. Well, lists can be wrong or misconceived. I want to put the case that Matthew Lipman should be right up there at the top, if not of philosophers of education, of philosophical educators, as I often prefer to call them. People who, in a sense, go into the classroom and practice what they preach. But I'm not going to go into the details of philosophy for children now. I guess that many people watching this will already know what that practice consists in. So I'm just going to take a step back from this idea of the place of Matthew Lipman in the grand history of education or even of humanity. So amongst those names, obviously Plato and Aristotle from the early foundations of Western philosophy, Comenius in the Middle Ages, more recently Piaget is there, perhaps that's no surprise, and one of the people who influenced me as a young teacher in the 1960s, a radical educator, A.S. Neal. And this was the time when I was reading books such as Teaching as a Subversive Activity. I still, to some extent, hold the ideals of that period, the 1960s. However, times have changed, and the role of education in the modern world, which I think Matthew Lipman foresaw, is very much one of, on the one hand, society, I suppose engineering, social engineering might be the right answer. We need nurses, we need doctors, we need plumbers, and so on and so forth. And education is supposed in some senses to serve society in those practical ways. But in another important sense, education is about building human resistance to false ideas, helping them to engage with great ideas and have great aspirations. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going off on one. But what I'm trying to say here is that Lipman, in my view, managed to straddle the world of formal education and informal education, traditional, progressive, and so on, and create a vision of education, a vision of the child, he'd sometimes say, which, well, certainly has inspired me for many years, but I think has inspired people across the world. Not perhaps quite in that radical vein. A contemporary of his, Freire, of course, well known as a radical pedagogue, and rightly so. Matthew Lipman was a quiet and almost shy person in my perspective, but he and Anne Sharp, his great collaborator, were nevertheless passionate about bringing education, healthy education, to children of all countries, and giving them an opportunity to explore philosophical ideas, great ideas, and effectively make them relevant to their own lives. For me, philosophy for children, the two great questions which Anne Sharp formulated were, what sort of person do I want to be, and what sort of world do I want to live in? Well, philosophy for children enables people to become better people, in my view. It could play a much more significant role in helping us build a better world. As things stand, I think educational systems across the world are badly in need of philosophy for children, and more so than any other educational intervention. So thanks to Matthew Lipman and Anne Sharp, the gift they've given is unsurpassable in my view. Thank you.
My name is Sophia. I live in Cape Town, South Africa.
My name is Storm and I live in Cape Town, South Africa.
Sophie and Storm, can you tell me, is philosophy with children different to what you normally learn about in class?
Yeah, in class we just learn about like maths, natural science, and all those other subjects. Philosophy of children, you get to ask more questions more freely, and yeah.
Thank you. Good. Sophia, can you tell me how philosophy with children is different from what else you learn at school?
Because it's like you get to experience different things and you can ask way more questions than teachers would ask you in class.
And why is that?
Because you're learning about different things.
Fantastic, thanks.
Yes, my name is Mordecai and I live in Cape Town, South Africa.
My name is Jack and I live in Cape Town, South Africa.
Mordecai and Jack, I worked with you last year doing philosophy with children, and we did lots of really interesting picture books. For example, like this one called Tidy. Do you remember that?
Yes, very well.
Good. Do you want to tell us something about what makes philosophy with children? Why was it special for you? Why was it interesting to you? Okay, Mordecai?
Because we got to read books with friends and it would help us to learn lots of cool things.
Cool things like what, Mordecai?
Like you're not tied up too much.
Exactly. Why? What was the problem? I'll ask you in a sec, Jack. Why do you not need to tidy up too much? What's wrong with
If
it?
you tidy up too much, you might get obsessed with it and start tidy upping other things that don't need to be tidied up.
Exactly. Jack, do you want to add to that or make another comment?
I'd like to say that philosophy is an important thing, and without philosophy, the whole world wouldn't be curious. That's why philosophy is very important in our lives.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks. Was there a time that you used a community of philosophical inquiry with your group Common Propaganda? Can you tell us why you chose that?
Yes, so
That's why philosophy is very important in our lives.
Fantastic. Thank you.
it allows for in-depth
Was there a time that you used a community of philosophical inquiry with your group Common Propaganda? Can you tell us why you chose that?
Yes, so Common Propaganda is a community and network of young artists and activists who are trying to create spaces for the youth to engage with social, political discourse in a creative way using aesthetics and collaborative knowledge-making processes. So in these images, we use the community of philosophical inquiry to discuss and interrogate the impacts of climate change on our society today. And I thought the community of inquiry would be an appropriate approach to this engagement because it allows for in-depth reflection but also non-judgment and a egalitarian space to share our individual experiences as well as concerns or thoughts on the issues at hand.
George, you were at that inquiry. What was your experience of the inquiry, and what can you share with us about why a philosophical inquiry works in some ways differently to other ways of thinking together with people?
I think one of the things that really stood out for me was the challenge that it made to some of the other ways that we've been taught to communicate, especially when we're philosophizing, which we think to be this academic thing. And so often it ends up being a debate or a fight. And the difference for me was it's kind of a careful thing, but also it moves away from just the individual and what I have to say and making sure that you know what I know and proving what I know and more about what we can all know together. And so it is a community. And I think I saw the challenges that brought up in myself and the sort of inclinations that I was fighting within me, or not fighting, but the challenge that I felt within myself, but also observing it in other people and the inclinations that we all have to want to be the center or be whatever, and just how this process allows us to kind of challenge that and work differently.
Thank you. Kai, can you tell us more about how you learned about philosophy with children?
Well, I first was exposed to it in primary school in grade 2.
we had weekly sort of communities of inquiry, and it really has helped change the way that I think and engage with other people and ideas specifically, and how a discussion space and other people in a community can be used in a different way, you know, and then not always taking things for granted and ideas and questioning what people always just accept. I feel like that's an important skill to have when it comes to sort of unpacking the world and your understanding of the world and how it can grow and evolve every day. I feel like it's been very instrumental in how I view it and how specifically I engage with a more empathetic view of other people's feelings and their thoughts, as well as keeping my own in perspective and making sure that my own views are equitable in the world. And yeah, I feel like communities of inquiry and philosophy for children has been really important in that discovery.
Thanks. So I learned about philosophy with children and Matthew Lipman's philosophy for children in 2011 in South Africa at a conference, and it has changed the way I think about children and childhood and questioning specifically. And so I'm very grateful for what I've been able to learn from children, because I've listened to them differently, and actually adults as well, because the community of philosophical inquiry as a pedagogy allows transformative classroom practices. And as a teacher and a lecturer, that's been really integral to my learning as I have changed the way I've approached teaching and listening and questioning and philosophizing. And so I've enjoyed being able to be in spaces where disagreement is normalized, where other people's ideas can be listened to differently, and where being able to leave a conversation with more questions or to leave an inquiry with more questions is generative and not something that is just born out of frustration, but is a place to... I've also learned how to think differently, and for that I'm really grateful for the work that he started many, many years ago.
안녕하세요. 대한민국의 생각탐험대입니다. 우리는 함께 모여서 책을 읽고 질문을 만들고 생각을 나누며 잘하고 있습니다.
어린이와 함께 철학하는 길을 열어주셔서 감사합니다.
매트림의 선생님의 탄생 100주년을 축하합니다.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Splitter. I'm very pleased to be able to say a few words about Matthew Lipman. Excuse me if I'm looking to the side because I have a few notes on my computer screen. Matthew Lipman, of course, was if not the pioneer and driving force behind philosophy for children, although he was not the only one. Nevertheless, it was Matt's innovative thinking which brought together the ideas of children and philosophy and the community of inquiry, and then connecting all of these up through using certain forms of literature or narrative as a stimulus. I was fortunate to know Matt over a period of about 25 years, although I think it's fair to say it's not clear how many people actually really knew him. He was happy to share his thoughts and his intellect and his ideas about particularly philosophy for children and related matters. But on the one hand, he didn't really acknowledge the intellectual achievements of those around him, particularly those in P4C. And he was an intensely private individual, so you never were quite sure what he was actually feeling at the time. He didn't really share his emotions with many, at least as I understand it. But Matt had a clear sense of the importance of doing philosophy with young people. Its liberating and democratizing potential, even if this did lead him to be rather critical, perhaps too critical, of existing practices and traditions. He did not, I think it's fair to say, entirely trust teachers or the teaching profession, whom he saw as committed to old-fashioned transmission or banking pedagogic methods. So the training model he introduced, particularly with Anne Margaret Sharp, had at its peak, or at its head, the crucial element were professional philosophers or PhDs at the centre, using the stimulus materials that the Institute, the IAPC, which he founded with Anne, had prepared. He gave little attention to the concept of pedagogy, as I see it, as a field of study or practice in its own right, which indeed did cause some tensions with teachers and teacher educators around the world, including in my own country, Australia. It's fair to say that Matt's main focus was his writing. He did travel and participate in many conferences, workshops, and in philosophy for children communities of inquiry, but I think we could probably say he didn't relish them, particularly in his later years. He was content to sit typing and contemplating in his own office within the IAPC, often for 7 days a week. You would find him there. Matt had a keen sense of aesthetics, which was I understand, his original area of philosophical interest, which can be seen in his own structured view of philosophy for children and thinking, particularly his ideas about critical thinking, creative thinking, and then later caring thinking. And this architectonic or structure had a certain Platonic ring to it, although he might not have seen it in that way, linking these forms of thinking with truth, beauty, and goodness. Were he still alive, I imagine that Matt would respond to the many troubles and turmoils evident in societies around the world by continuing to sit quietly in his own study, engaging with what would be in a real but somewhat abstract sense, rather than having to deal directly with the world's messiness and irrationality.
Hello, I'm Mon Gregory. I'm a professor of educational foundations at Montclair State University, and I took over directing the IAPC Institute for the Advancement of Philosophy for Children when Matt Lipman retired in 2001. I met Matthew Lipman and Anne Margaret Sharp when they came to Mexico City to teach a 2-week course in the doctoral program in philosophy with a concentration in philosophy for children at the Universidad Iberoamericana, which was program directed by the wonderful Teresa de la Garza. When I came to the IPC a few years later as a new assistant professor, the IPC was housed in an old greenhouse across the street from the main university campus. I eventually moved my office into the second floor of the old house, where Megan Laverty and Joanne Matkowski had offices across the hall from me. David Kennedy had an attic office upstairs, and Matt and Anne had their offices on the ground floor below. Those were wonderful years where graduate students, visiting scholars, teachers would gather in the kitchen, and they would work at any open desk, and we held meetings and small classes there in the house's one large room, which was lined with hundreds of books that would spill over from Matt's office and Anne's office. There were, of course, houseplants and a cat. The roof would leak over Anne's desk sometimes, and the basement used to flood sometimes and ruin some of our inventory down there. But every room of that old house had cupboards and filing cabinets that were filled with articles and institute records and philosophical stories that people would send in from all over the world. The house was always noisy, full of activity, discussion, writing, planning, teaching, arguing, laughing. And if some of that didn't involve Matt Lipman directly, it all seemed to come from his long, narrow office at the back of the house, although he has sometimes had to shut his glass doors against the noise to get his own work done. In those days, ever since I came to the IPC, Matt was in his office almost every day of the year, 7 days a week. He would come in early in the morning, like 7 in the morning, make some instant coffee, and listen to the news on his small radio, sifting through papers. He was always working on more than one piece of writing at a time, and of course everyone knows he used an old manual typewriter, which seems to just be part of him. He never graduated to an electric typewriter, let alone a computer. But he spent a lot of his time consulting with faculty and with graduate students and with visitors from around the world. He spent as much time doing that as he did on his own scholarship and writing the novels. He was very generous with his time. And I spent many enjoyable hours talking to him, sitting by his desk, talking about what he was reading or writing, what I was reading and writing, and about the work of the Institute. And my young daughter was a frequent visitor in those days, and Matt was always eager to start up a conversation with her, sometimes by showing or gifting her a little trinket from a part of the world that was from his office. She got her first typing practice banging away on one of his electric or manual typewriters, which he had abandoned. In 2005, the IPC moved in with our College of Education into a brand new academic building, which was on the opposite end of campus. And Matt had been retired then for about 4 years. And though he used to come he had an office there, and he would come once in a while, but not very often. The new offices were less accessible, and the move also coincided with a decline in Matt's health. So we managed to bring a lot of the noise and activity over into the new offices, but Matt's absence was always very palpable. I miss his scholarly advice. I miss the wonderful conversations we had about philosophy, and mostly I just miss knowing that Matt is there in the back of the room I could always go talk to. Happy birthday, Matt.
Salve, mi chiamo Marina Santi, sono nata e cresciuta in Italia e vivo ancora qui. Lavoro all'Università di Padova. Era l'anno 1990 quando ho conosciuto Matthew Lipman. Ho passato per la prima volta l'oceano a 26 anni, sicura che il mio nome e la mia data di nascita, born the 4th of July, fossero di buon auspicio per volare negli Stati Uniti d'America, ed è stato così. Avevo portato un fiore rosa di stoffa durante il viaggio, con cui farmi riconoscere all'aeroporto di Newark, dove mi aspettava una giovane donna che poi mi ha accolto nella sua casa. Si chiamava Anne Sharp. L'incontro con Matt è ancora indelebile. Ricordo la veranda alla Montclair State University, dove aveva il suo studio, da cui si vedevano gli scoiattoli saltare qua e là, un po' come i suoi pensieri. Ricordo l'intervista che gli feci, ma più ancora la sua delicata capacità di rovesciare tutte le mie domande. Ricordo che mi lasciava stare nel suo studio quando lui doveva andare a lezione e che io sbirciavo e rubavo ogni suo sguardo e sottolineatura nei suoi libri. Ma so che quello era un suo dono speciale per me. ho avuto tra le mani la prima bozza dattiloscritta di Natasha, che poi davvero mi donò. Era sulla sua scrivania. Ricordo i gatti che lui amava e il calendario su di loro che gli avevo portato come omaggio, sicura che ci avrebbe reso reciprocamente simpatici, ed è stato così. Ricordo che ero in dubbio se regalargli piuttosto un sasso. Sì, un sasso, perché mai nessuno prima di lui aveva detto in quel modo quanto era meraviglioso stringerne uno tra le mani. Lo dice infatti Gus proprio a Chio. Ricordo che alla domanda «Dunque dovremmo lasciare tempo ai bambini per fermarsi a pensare?» lui scranò gli occhi da dietro gli occhiali già spessi che aveva e mi rispose «Why stopping? Thinking is moving, Marina!» Non lo dimenticherò mai. Pensare è muoversi. Non avevo bisogno di andare al di là dell'oceano per saperlo. Da giovane un po' impertinente che ero, incalzai dicendo «Ma muoversi verso dove?» E lui mi rispose sorridendo «The communities go where inquiry leads». Non posso dimenticare nemmeno questo. Ancora vado in quella direzione, incerta, anche se il mio dottorato di ricerca è certamente finito da oltre 30 anni. E lo vidi davvero andare con i bambini, a pensare nelle aule delle scuole pubbliche del New Jersey. Dunque, Philosophy in the Classroom non era solo il titolo di un bellissimo libro. Ci andammo insieme una volta e poi ci ritrovammo tutti su una pagina del New York Times. Matt e io sono questa qui. È l'unica foto che ho con lui. Vorrei trovare un dono nuovo da fargli per festeggiare questi suoi 100 anni, ma resto solo debitrice di tanta ricchezza ricevuta e preferisco solo mantenere la promessa di restare come lui, una bambina.
Querido Matt, assim te fazia chamar. Embora confesso que me dava certa vergonha e preferia te chamar de Lipman.
Escrevemos esta carta para te agradecer pela criação da filosofia para crianças.
Celebramos seu caráter infantil, ousado, irreverente, questionador. A menina já tem 50 anos, quando tu estás fazendo 100.
Com tua ideia infantil começou, ou pelo menos se tornou possível começar, um novo mundo em mundos já um pouco velhos e conformados.
A filosofia e a educação franziram o sobrolho e torceram o nariz nas instituições.
Filosofia para crianças? Infância na filosofia? Talvez tenham percebido com grande dificuldade e perturbação esse começo.
Mas você, junto a Anne, ela sim eu conseguia chamar de Anne. E tantas outras mãos atreveram-se a começar algo que abriu espaço para muitos outros começos em vidas filosoficamente educadoras.
Aqui no NEFI, o Núcleo de Estudos de Filosofia e Infâncias da Universidade do Estado do Rio de Janeiro, estamos sempre tratando de começar. Sempre começando ou tentando começar. Perto do chão, abaixamo-nos, minoramo-nos, acocoramo-nos e fazemo-nos pequenos. Apequenamo-nos, pondo os ouvidos, os olhos, a pele e a bunda perto do chão. Abaixamo-nos bem devagarzinho, de mãos dadas.
Balanceamos, viramos sobre o peso dos corpos desajeitados e quase caímos. Rimos, retomamos. Recomeçamos a partir deste novo lugar. Crianças para a filosofia.
Estamos aqui de pé, no ateliê que leva o teu nome, descendo, nos empequenecendo. Perguntamos desde baixo o que muda de filosofia para crianças até crianças para filosofia. Trocar uma pela outra seria o equivalente a pormos-nos de cócoras? Ou precisaríamos de algo mais? Por exemplo, crianças em filosofia, como diz nosso amigo Giuseppe Ferraro.
Ou será preciso entendê-los de modo diferente para que as possibilidades e os sentidos do encontro se multipliquem?
Quando a filosofia é praticada com crianças, nossa própria concepção da filosofia trambaleia. Crianças para a filosofia faz pensar em crianças filosóficas, crianças filósofas e em filosofias infantis.
A infância não diz respeito apenas às crianças. Há crianças de muitas idades.
A infância não tem a ver apenas, ou sobretudo, com uma temporalidade cronológica, mas com temporalidades intensivas que se podem experimentar em diversas idades.
Crianças para a filosofia poderia dar lugar a filosofias de crianças de todas as idades. Filosofias popularmente infantis. Talvez já estejamos perto demais do chão.
E nessa altura, a mais baixa possível, te queremos brindar, te abraçar e comemorar os teus 100 anos de vida sensível à infância. Obrigado pelo começo dos começos no filosofar infantil, querido Marco. Rio de Janeiro, 24 de agosto de 2023.
sua origem latina, o prefixo ani vem de annus, que significa ano. E vertere é do verbo voltar. Significa aquilo que sempre volta, aquele dia específico pelo qual esperamos e a que podemos regressar todos os anos. Por um lado, o aniversário é o movimento de sempre podermos acrescentar mais uma unidade na contagem dos anos que já temos. E é como se começássemos outra vez a viagem. Por outro lado, por um breve segundo, parece que nos colocamos no excitante momento inicial, no momento do começo da contagem, o momento zero. E esta é a magia de termos todas as possibilidades abertas, de afirmarmos o mundo como um lugar de novidade possível, de esperança, em que nada está fixado, nada está decidido antecipadamente. No fundo, esta é a magia da infância. As crianças do projeto Escuto-te da Universidade dos Açores levaram-nos para outras infâncias de Lipman nesta celebração. A infância que elas próprias inventaram para o menino Matthew e a infância que o autor Lipman criou através das personagens infantis das novelas que ele escreveu. E é hoje isso que nos faz estar aqui a celebrar 100 anos de Matthew Lipman. Parabéns a todos nós que continuaremos a lê-lo à procura das infâncias que ainda estão por dizer, por escrever e por desenhar.
I'm going to translate what Magda has just presented. There's something special in the word anniversary. In the Latin origin, the prefix ani that comes from annus, and vertere, the verb return. Anniversary means something that always returns. That specific day that we wait, we expect, and that might come again, return every year. The anniversary is a movement that we can always add one unity, counting the years we already have, and it's like we begin again to travel. And for an instant, maybe that we put ourselves in this initial exciting moment, in the beginning of the counting, in the zero moment. This is the magic of having all the possibilities open, the affirmation of the world as a place of the possible novelty, of hope, where nothing is already fixed or decided beforehand. In the end, this is the magic of childhood. As children of the project Escuto Azores, we were brought to other childhoods of Lipman, a childhood that these children invented to the child Matthew, and the childhood that the author Lipman created through his childlike characters of the novels he wrote. And today, it is this that makes us being here to celebrate 100th birthday of Matthew Lipman. Congratulations to all of us that we continue to reading and searching the childhood that we still have to say, to write, and to draw. Mon?
Thanks. I'm going to give just a brief biography of Matt, and I'm going to share my screen. I want to just share a few slides. I only have 7 slides, so this is not going to be long, but I just wanted to put up a few facts about Lipman that some people might not know. So as we know, he was born on this day 100 years ago in Vineland, New Jersey. He graduated from high school at the age of 16. He was accepted into Michigan State University, but he could not afford the tuition. And so he just worked for a while. And then World War II happened. He was drafted. He actually volunteered to be in the Air Force when World War II began, but his eyesight was not good enough. So he was not accepted into the Air Force. And then so later he was drafted into the Army, and he became the company clerk of his company, and he served as a soldier in France, Germany, and Austria. And it was because of the Army program, while he was training as a soldier, he was able to attend a few semesters at Stanford University in California, and that's where he started reading John Dewey. And then after the war, he was able to go, Congress made what we call the GI Bill, and it enabled soldiers who had served, American soldiers who had served in the war, to attend university. So he went to Columbia. And while he was there, he got his undergraduate and his doctorate at Columbia. And John Dewey was still alive, and Matt Lipman visited and corresponded with Dewey. Dewey had retired by then, but Lipman visited and corresponded with Dewey. And we have copies of that correspondence. After his doctorate, he won a Fulbright scholarship to study in Paris for 2 more years. And on the boat to Paris, he met a beautiful African-American woman named Winona Moore. And she was a professor at a college in Georgia, where, among other things, one of her students was Martin Luther King, where she had tutored him. She was also going to Paris on a Fulbright scholarship, and they started dating in Paris, and they married there before they came back to the United States, because at that time, in many states of the United States, a Black woman and a white man could not marry. It was against the law. So they came back. Matt got a job, as a lot of people know, at Columbia University. He was actually in the College of Pharmacy there, and he taught there for 20 years, almost 20 years. And during that time, he was born, he and his wife had a daughter and a son, born in 59, just a year apart, and in 59 and 60. Okay, one more slide of dates. While he was still at Columbia, he got the idea to write the philosophical novel for children. He started writing in 68 and 69. He got a grant to pilot the first novel in 1970 through 73, Harry Stottlemyre's Discovery. In 1970, Winona was elected as the first African-American New Jersey state senator. She made history, and she remained a senator for the rest of her life. Matt moved to Montclair State College in 72. In 73, he held one of the first national conferences on pre-college philosophy, and that's where he met Anne Margaret Sharp. She was just beginning at Montclair State that year, and the two, of course, became partners. They co-founded the Institute in 74. Matt had a second marriage that same year in 74, started the journal in 79. He got honorary doctorates. I think the American Philosophical Association Prize in 2001 meant a lot to him, because it was a belated recognition by that association of the value of philosophy for children. Retired in 2001 and died in 2010. I think this might be interesting to some people, just to look at the volume of his publications. Lawrence made reference to this in his tribute, but he was a prolific author of all kinds of work, scholarly work and curricular work and magazine articles and book reviews, et cetera, et cetera. And as many people know, both his scholarly works and his curriculum works have been translated and adapted. And Matt was very insistent that when people translated, especially the curricular titles, they were required to culturally adapt them as well, so they wouldn't just be American stories. And so these are the records that we have at the Institute. These are the number of languages, and of course, and more countries and languages. Like, I think there are 5 or 6 different dialects of Spanish that the works have been translated into. I just want to end with a special tribute to Matt's son, William, who died very young at the age of 24 of cancer. And Matt told some stories about him, but this is what Matt wrote. The year that he died, he dedicated one of the issues of the Thinking Journal to his son. And he attributes his idea for philosophy for children to conversations he had with his son and with his daughter. So my last slide is just some more photos of Matt with his
Thank you. Thank you, Mom. Marina.
E pensando a una festa di compleanno e a tutti quelli che vorrebbero esserci a festeggiare, ho pensato ad un'amica importante di Matt, Anne, che avrebbe voluto esserci a festeggiare con lui questi 100 anni, sicuramente. Nel manuale dare un senso al mio mondo, in italiano questa è la traduzione, che accompagna il racconto L'ospedale delle bambole. Anne Sharp racconta di una festa di compleanno, proprio la festa di compleanno del papà, e dedica un capitolo del manuale ai compleanni. Vi leggo le parole di Anne sui compleanni. I compleanni sono giorni molto speciali per i bambini. Il compleanno è il loro giorno. Spesso si organizza per loro una festa e vengono offerti loro doni. I compleanni sono giorni in cui celebriamo noi stessi. È il giorno in cui siamo venuti al mondo. E quali sono le regole di una buona festa di compleanno? Forse dovreste chiederlo ai bambini. Includono una torta di compleanno? Includono regali? Forse includono candele? Includono l'espressione di desideri? Includono la condivisione della torta con altre persone? Oppure escludono qualcosa di queste cose? Per esempio, una persona potrebbe fare una festa di compleanno da sola? Potrebbe fare una festa di compleanno se chi si festeggia non esprime un desiderio? Le feste di compleanno sono una forma di rituale in cui impariamo che cosa sia trattare una persona. Ognuno ha un compleanno, anche i più poveri. La torta è sempre condivisa da una comunità e i desideri esprimono una tensione verso come le cose dovrebbero essere piuttosto che come sono. Queste le parole di Anne e credo che la comunità, che è una parola che contiene in latino munus, che vuol dire proprio dono, e cum, che vuol dire dono insieme, sia quello che possiamo offrire come omaggio a Matthew Lipman. La comunità è il dono dello stupore e della bambinezza, da condividere nelle nostre scuole, nelle nostre università, nei nostri centri, istituti o International Council mondiali. Questo dobbiamo essere come dono per lui, una comunità di stupore e bambinezza.
So I'm gonna try to translate, gonna do my best to translate Marina's words into English. She was thinking about the birthday party. So what does a birthday party has. So she thought of a friend of Matt's that is Anne and Sharp, and she wanted to bring Anne to the party. So she read some words of the Doll Hospital novel manual in a part that is about a birthday. There is some episode about a birthday, and in the manual there are some ideas to work with this idea. So Marina asks, what are the rules of a good birthday party? So does it include cake, gifts, desires? The words on the manual are, I'm gonna do some very quick translation from the Italian. Birthdays are very special days to children. Birthdays are their days. So often it's organized for them a party, and it's offered to them gifts. Birthdays are days in which we celebrate ourselves and the days in which we came to the world. So yeah, Marina thinks about the rules of a birthday party. Does it have to include a cake, gifts, but also what cannot miss, what a birthday party cannot miss? So, for example, could a person make a birthday party alone, by herself, by himself, or do not express a desire? We don't know. So these are Anne's words about the birthdays, and also says that birthday parties are a type of ritual in which we learn this meaning, that is, everyone has a birthday. Also the poor. So the birthday cake is shared on a community, and the desire, the birthday desires are expressed as a tension between how things should be. No, sorry, as a tension to how things should be more than how things actually are. So yeah, she thinks about this idea of community, about the words community, and also dono, that means gift, and about how what we're doing here as an international community is actually a gift to this community and also to Lipman. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Thank you. I imagine today that on Matthew Lipman's birthday that I'll be having a conversation with him. And so I'm going to tell him a couple of things about where I'm from and where I live. I think he'd be interested. In South Africa, it is still not possible for children in primary or even high school to learn philosophy, and it is only offered as a subject in higher education. This implies that philosophy has no role to play in social change or in practices of social justice as understood by those responsible for designing the curriculum. So I live in a country where there's this belief about children, childhood and education, and I'm not different to the country that Matthew Lipman lived in, and I think parts of it are still like that now. So I think Matthew would be interested to know that yesterday, on the day before his 100th birthday, I worked with a group of third graders, 8 to 9-year-old children, using philosophy with children, and specifically the pedagogy, the community of philosophical inquiry, which Anne Margaret Sharp started with him 100 years since his birth. That's what we did yesterday. And these are some of the questions the children thought about. we had used a book called For Every Child, which is about human rights, the Children's Bill of Rights. And the first question was, why do children have to hide their true selves in important places like their classroom? Another question was, why do our parents think they have the right to go to war? Another question was, is there a right to choose your religion, even if it's different to your parents? And one other question was, why did people start racism and apartheid? And these questions are political. They speak of the philosophy of child and childhood. They raise questions about education, teaching, teachers, South African teachers, about war and religion. And there's a critique in P4C about race, but almost every inquiry that I'm a part of brings up the complexity of race in South Africa. It's something that remains really closely affects everyone, and something we pay close attention to, and children pay close attention to. And the philosophical inquiries allow them the space to speak of it. The question we discussed was, that the children chose was, why do children have to hide their true selves at important places like their classrooms? And they discussed that for some of them who are energetic in class, they have to hide this from their teachers. They spoke about not being able to be wild. Some mentioned that they have to raise their hands to speak before they can simply speak. And you may even have noticed that in the video. It's very ingrained in the schooling system, a respect for teachers and authority, which enacts a kind of control. The children enjoy many aspects of their teaching in general, but philosophy for children and the community of philosophical inquiry allows children to ask questions that matter. And I would argue that this is an example of academic freedom and exercising of a healthy form of democracy, which is not always prevalent in schooling at all levels. So thank you, Matthew. My experience of philosophy with children is an enactment of instability, which is not negative, but acts as a form of necessary resistance and refusal in classroom settings to a desired status quo where children or child is considered deficit. I want to thank you, Matthew, for the gift of P4C and the pathways of love and care and joy that are not just channels, but are dynamic forces that are always part of what a reimagined classroom or educational encounter can be. There's always space and depth for issues of social justice and philosophy, ways to encounter the known, the unknown, and the always to be known. I would like to end with some questions that I'd like to share with Matthew, share with you. What is about someone's birth that has changed my life? What is it about someone's birth that makes me want to live differently? What is about someone's life that has made me want to change the world and then change the many worlds I inhabit as mother, teacher, lecturer, academic, friend? I'm Roseanne Reynolds, and I live and work in Cape Town, South Africa. Philosophy with children is a growing and significant movement in South Africa. There are many others like me doing this important work here with children and students in schools and universities. Thank you, Matthew Lipman. Dankie, Matthew Lipman. Nkosi Kakulu, Matthew Lipman. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Roseanne. Me gustaría compartir dos anécdotas para celebrar los 100 años de Matthew Lipman. La primera es cuando estaba en el IAPC, en la Casa Verde, esa que contó Mon, a la que Matthew Lipman iba todos los días a las 7 de la mañana, de domingo a domingo, y recuerdo su extraordinaria generosidad, que yo estaba escribiendo mi tesis de doctorado, y estaba en el segundo piso, en la oficina que después fue la oficina de Mon, y yo le llevaba, bajaba, le llevaba un capítulo de mi tesis escrita, y a las 2 o 3 horas subía Matthew Lipman por la escalera y me devolvía el capítulo escrito, comentado y anotado, y me decía, baja si querés, y conversamos un poco.
All right, so I will be translating Walter's words. he was saying that he's going to tell us two anecdotes, two stories from his experiences with Matthew Lipman in the YPC, in the greenhouse that Mon was talking about earlier. He was saying that, Walter was saying that he was doing his PhD dissertation, he was working on that, and he was on the office in the space on the second floor, and he would give Matt a chapter of his thesis, and 2 or 3 hours later, he would go upstairs and hand back the chapter with annotations and comments, and he said to Walter that he could walk downstairs and maybe chat for a while about the thesis.
Eso es sobre la enorme generosidad de Matthew Lipman con sus estudiantes. Y la segunda anécdota es algo que me pasó esta mañana, extraordinario. Yo vivo en Río de Janeiro, y tengo la suerte de estar a media hora caminando del mar, y como casi todas las mañanas que estoy aquí, fui a nadar. Y cuando camino, hago esa caminata de media hora, paso por una escuela pública, la escuela en Urca. Y esta mañana, mientras yo iba caminando, pensando en esta celebración y en cosas de cómo la haríamos y qué diría, paso por la escuela Minas Gerais y hay 2 niñas que tendrían unos 7 u 8 años en la puerta esperando para entrar. Y me paran y me preguntan, ¿acepta una flor? Y yo les dije, ¿cómo no la voy a aceptar? Me dieron 2 flores. Esa es la otra flor. Pensé que era demasiada coincidencia. Paso todos los días, hace años, por esa escuela. Es la primera vez que 2 niñas me paran y me regalan 2 flores. Pensé que no era coincidencia, pensé que era una flor para Anne y otra flor para Matthew Lipman.
All right, so he's telling us something that happened today, this morning, that caught him by surprise. He lives in Rio de Janeiro, very near the sea. He frequently takes a swim in the morning. And in that walk that takes about half an hour, he passes in front of a school in Urca that is called the School of Minas Gerais, or School Minas Gerais. He was thinking about what he was going to say today and what we could share in this celebration. And he saw 2 girls waiting in the door of the school to enter. And this time, those 2 girls, little girls, stopped him and asked him if he would like to accept a flower. And he, of course, responded, how couldn't I not accept? So he showed us one of the flowers that is yellow and is near the photograph behind him, thinking that it was not just a coincidence. He thinks that it's probably 1 flower for Anne and 1 flower for Matt. It's the first time that this happens to him, and so he found it very, oh, right, the 2 flowers. He found it very nice, surprising, and amusing.
And it's a kind of anecdote, it's a symbol of the gratitude I feel for Anne and Matt, for the worlds they have opened for childhood, for our childhood, but also for the infinite childhoods in the world. I'm sorry, I'm realizing I'm speaking in English. Entonces, traduzco diciendo que es como un símbolo de gratitud por a Matt y a Anne por las infancias que nos abrieron, por las nuevas relaciones con la infancia. Y ahora tenemos una sorpresa. And now we have a surprise. We have a wonderful surprise. tenemos una extraordinaria sorpresa. Mon dijo antes que celebró y mostró una foto de Will, el hijo, que murió joven, de Matthew Lipman, con 24 años. Mon showed us a picture of Will that was Matt's son that died very young of cancer. And Will had a daughter, a sister. Matt has had a daughter. And we have talked to Karen, Matthew Lipman's daughter, and let's listen what she has to say to celebrate her father's, Matthew Lipman, 100th birthday. Y encontramos nosotros a Karen, la hermana de Will, la hija de Matthew Lipman, y la invitamos a que nos diga unas palabras para celebrar los 100 años de su padre, Matthew Lipman. Vamos a ver qué nos dice Karen. So, Karen, so nice to meet you. So, I feel so touched. You, you know that with the mentors, we have a kind of parental relationship. So, I feel in a sense so close to you, having your father as an academic father, something like that.
That's wonderful.
So for me, it's very touching, and I thank you so much. This opportunity to know each other and to be able to listen to you about other dimensions of your father. You know that Matthew Lipman is a strong name in many countries around the world in the field of philosophy for children. So to hear the voice of someone who has been a child with the creator of philosophy for children, I think it's something very important. I wonder even necessary. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
No problem. Thank you.
And so may I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
So one has to do with the fact that your father was a philosopher dedicated to childhood, to children. So he created the Philosophy for Children program. So did you feel this in some way? Do you think that you, as a father, this influenced the way he was a father with you? How do you say that? Is there any sense in which you recognize that your father was a philosopher?
Yes, I do, because what I remember, and a lot of what I remember of my father was just fun. He was a fun dad. We had fun together. He was concerned with what we thought about things and the way that we thought about things. I can't give you an exact experience where he asked us, but it was just the way that he treated us. He would always ask questions. He would want to know how we felt about things, instead of being a parent maybe that would tell you, no, you're doing the wrong thing, or you made a mistake or whatever. My father would always ask, how do you feel about what happened, or how do you feel about what you did? It was more of questions than to make us realize and to make us think about what we did, instead of telling us, oh no, go to your room or whatever. He would more ask questions about, how do you think about this? How do you feel about this? And I think that's where the philosopher came through. And he was always thinking about things, and studying and reading. And I think that is more what I remember about my father more than anything. And I think the way I am today, the way I think about things and the way I question things, the way I question people, how I feel about life comes from him. I don't make quick judgments about people. I'm more open-minded and open to ideas and concepts and things. And I think that comes from him, more than anyone. People tell me I'm different, and I think that comes from him. I've never met anyone like you. You're so different, and I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know what they mean, but I think it comes from my father and just his concepts of life and being open to people and open to thinking of new things and new ways to do things and just life in general. He was just happy with life and living life, and I think all of that is in me somewhere. I can't think of one special time. I wish I could, where I can tell you a conversation that we had where we could sit down and he told me something spectacular, but it was more in just the way he was. He was just a kind and loving person. He was a friendly person. He was someone that if you had a problem, you could always come to him and he would help you. He was just that kind of person. And that's why I love my dad so much, I think, because he was always there for me. He was always there for other people or people in need. I wish I could tell you what made him a philosopher, but I think it was just his general outlook on life that made him that way. And where that came from?
Sorry.
No, I'm saying where that came from, I don't know.
But you told us a lot about him as a philosopher, because for many people, philosophy is precisely a way of life or a way of relating to other people. So, so you gave us a strong philosophical answer of how philosophy was, and also in a personal way, I share all these comments about the attention, the friendly way. Also, as my mentor, I think that also I could say that more than the content or theories, I learned from him exactly what you said, a way to relate to thinking, to people, to actions, a way of making a question instead of making a moral judgment. So it's very meaningful what you say. It speaks about philosophy. And you know that philosophy for children puts together philosophy and childhood. And you say how your father, how Matthew Lipman had a philosophical life. I wonder if he also had a childlike life. I mean, if he also, as an adult, he also kept alive his child, and he kind of, this I learned from a girl once in a school in Italy. She told me that philosophy was invented by a woman that didn't want to forget that she was a child, that she was a girl. And this is a wonderful definition of philosophy. So I wonder how your father kept his child alive, how he was still a child, even as a father. Can you tell something about this?
He was. That's why I say my dad was a fun dad, because everything we did together was fun. It was kind of like playing with a third friend. he was always that way. When we had snowball fights or we had to make snow angels, my dad was always the one that we did it with. My mom was always busy. She was always either cooking or working. My dad was the person that we played with and had fun with. Not to say my mom wasn't, but he was the one that would tell us the stories, make up the stories, make up the tell us a bedtime story at night. I think he was always, to a certain extent, the person that he had always been his whole life. I don't think he ever changed. I don't think he ever grew up. I think he was always the same as he was when he was little, because he just came across that way. I'm sure if you talk to friends of his or colleagues, they'll tell you that he told them a funny story or he related something funny about something that happened to him in life. That's just the way he was. I think he was just a child at heart. That's just the kind of person he was.
So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that makes all sorts of sense. Because it could be very difficult to bring philosophy for children without keeping your childhood inside or living as a child. And
yes.
Karen, what would you like to say? This video will be listened from people everywhere in the world, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, in South America, in Latin America, everywhere. What would you like to say to all these people that are celebrating together the 100 years of your father?
I just like to say thank you. Thank you for thinking of my father, remembering my father, appreciating my father for the things that he did. I've run across, I believe on Facebook. I was on Facebook maybe 10 years ago for a little while, and I did run across a couple of his students, and I felt really bad because they were asking me questions that I really couldn't answer about my father's studies, but it really impressed me, and it really impressed on me the effect that my dad had on other people. I don't see that in my day-to-day life. I realize that. I'm very impressed with everything that my father did, but to run across students and other people that have worked with him, it always impresses me because I'm like, wow, my dad really affected so many people. So I just want to thank them for appreciating everything that he did, everything that he worked for and struggled for, and the work that he put out. And just for him himself, people that have met him, like yourself, that really appreciate him. I just want to thank you because I don't get to see that, I think, on a regular basis.
So thank you, Karen. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
In your name, thank you, your father. Thank you for being part of this wonderful idea that changed the life of so many people around the world. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
And hope we celebrate 100 years again soon.
We will.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Karen, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Okay.
All right,
thanks
take
a
good
lot.
care.
All right.
Another surprise. Ainda temos uma outra surpresa. We are going to launch the bilingual Spanish and Portuguese translation of Matthew Lipman's autobiography. Vamos a presentar la autobiografía de Matthew Lipman, bilingüe, español y portugués, with lots of photos of Matthew Lipman, com muitas fotos de Matthew Lipman. Eu vou mostrar para vocês o livro que é publicado pela Nefi Edições. Eu vou apresentar para vocês a página, o caminho que se segue para baixar o livro, para encontrar o livro. Deve estar aí escrito no chat qual é o link. E então eu vou compartilhar agora a página. E nesta página, Nefi Edições, vocês podem procurar aqui, na coleção Ensaios, e vai encontrar aqui uma vida ensinando a pensar. Fazem o download, se apertam aqui o download, e logo aparece o livro. Uma vida ensinando a pensar. Depois, vamos a escutar aos tradutores do livro. Estão aqui Daniel Gaivota, que fez a tradução para o português, e Carmina Shapiro, que hizo la traducción para el español. Pero quería mostrarles también, antes de presentarles a los traductores, algunas imágenes que aparecen en el libro. El libro es de descarga gratuita, por si no lo he dejado claro. Lo pueden bajar gratuitamente de ese site y contiene una presentación, un estudio, una introducción a esta edición. Y ya llegamos después, cuando termina la versión en portugués y antes de la versión en castellano, en el medio aparecen unas imágenes, algunas inéditas, de Matthew Lipman. Algunas las vimos aquí, Mon las mostró. Matthew Lipman con su primera mujer, Fiona, y sus 2 hijos. Aquí está Karen, que escuchamos ahora. Aquí está Winina Lipman con Karen y Will. Lipman y su hijo, que murió a los 24 años. Lipman en su escritorio. Tapas de libros. Una propaganda para que los padres leyeran un número especial de Metafilosofía. Lipman en su escritorio, en una escuela pública en New Jersey. Algunas clases de grupos que asistían a las formaciones en Nueva Jersey. Lipman en Buenos Aires. Lipman en Brasil, con Marcos Lorieri. Lipman en Dinamarca y otras profesoras. La primera sede del IAPC, que era un container, un trailer, la Casa Verde. Lipman y Sharp con Catherine Ian Silva, que introdujo filosofía para crianças no Brasil. Más fotos de Lipman. Y aquí tenemos una foto del doctorado en filosofía para crianças de la primera generación, doctorado organizado por María Teresa de la Garza, Ann Sharp y Matthew Lipman y la turma de estudiantes que estábamos allí. Bueno, vamos a escuchar a los traductores, a Carmina Shapiro y a Daniel Gaivot.
Ok, obrigado, Walter. Então, we're gonna speak in our native languages and we're gonna add to the game of a community, a translating community. So one's gonna translate the other afterwards. Então, em português, a gente queria agradecer muito, dizer que estamos muito contentes por esse lançamento, assim, foi um trabalho muito interessante, e a gente queria falar de algumas coisas muito rapidamente, mas algumas coisas que a gente pensou ao longo desse trabalho, desse processo de tradução, e que a gente considera interessantes para quem vai ler o livro. Então, a primeira é sobre a ideia de tradução, sobre a ideia do que é traduzir, do que significa isso também filosoficamente. Agora, acabei de enviar uma mensagem aqui para Marina, dizendo assim: Marina, desculpa não ter traduzido tão bonito quanto o que você falou. E ela me respondeu dizendo assim: a tradução traz sempre uma outra beleza. E a gente pensou um pouco sobre isso, assim, sobre como era importante também para o Matthew Lipman essa ideia de tradução, sobre como era importante também uma tradução, mesmo também da ideia de uma linguagem infantil e de uma linguagem adulta, de uma co-tradução. E o processo de traduzir este livro especificamente foi muito interessante, porque levou essa ideia de tradução para um outro nível, porque foi uma tradução feita entre muitas pessoas. Muitas pessoas colocaram a mão nessa tradução. Então, a gente encostou em traduções dessa biografia, de trechos da biografia que já tinham sido feitos antes por outras pessoas. A gente trocou tradução entre nós. Muitas pessoas revisaram o texto. E a própria ideia de ter uma edição bilíngue é muito bonita, a gente acha, porque permite isso, né? Que às vezes o mesmo trecho seja traduzido de duas formas diferentes. Então é uma espécie de diálogo, entre muitas pessoas, entre muitas línguas, entre muitos países, entre muitas épocas. E eu vou fechar, cara.
Para aí.
Vai.
Comente para traducir. Well, Daniel was saying he first wanted to. He's very grateful for this opportunity, and he's very happy with the work of translating. He wants to share, as well as I will later, share some things that we thought about. Well, I guess that while doing the translation and after the translation. In the meanwhile, wondering what it means to translate, what is to translate. He told us that after he translated Marina earlier, he wrote a message to her apologizing, and Marina said something that struck Danny as very wonderful. Traduction always brings another kind of beauty. Okay. Danny was saying that translating is also, in a way, talking a childlike language. And he finds it very interesting that this was a traduction made by various people, because some pieces of the autobiography were translated by other persons. And so, especially in Portuguese, it remains as a compound of a lot of voices. And well, he was saying that it's really nice and really interesting that it's a bilingual edition, because it creates like a kind of dialogue between all these people around the world. And in the translation, sorry, I'm saying it wrong, in the translation and the well, and this book, in a sense.
Sorry, Carmi, I went too much. But it's that queria só por último dizer que essa tradução eu acho que funcionou um pouco como o encontro de hoje, como uma espécie de comunidade de investigação, né? E acho que Lipman ficaria feliz com o resultado, mas que acho que ele ficaria ainda mais feliz com o processo.
Nice. He says now that the traduction and translation resulted as a kind of community, just like it was today in this gathering, in this presentation. Bueno, ahora es mi turno. Para mí fue toda una experiencia esta traducción, fue encontrarme con una cara de Matthew Lipman que no conocía, muy humana. Por eso también me parece, digamos, me da muchas ganas de invitar a todas las personas a que lo lean, a que lean la biografía. Hay perlas lindas para encontrar ahí. Lo mismo ver las fotos que compartieron, escuchar las anécdotas. Para nosotros que no lo pudimos conocer a Lipman y a Anne, es muy emocionante. Trae otra historia que no podemos conocer de otra manera. Y bueno, a mí me conmueve mucho todo esto. Un poco que de alguna manera somos la generación que sigue y bueno, estamos en este compromiso amoroso de seguir haciendo crecer la filosofía en el encuentro con la infancia.
Sorry. So, yeah, she was saying also about the process of translation, the process of also reading to translate, and was super interesting to Carmina because she was able to find a face of Lipman that she wasn't actually expecting, a more human face of the author, Matthew Lipman. And it was surprising, and that's why she wanted to invite everyone, strongly invite everyone to read the book, to meet this new face of Lipman as well. And for us that couldn't be able to meet these people, meet Matthew Lipman in person, meet Anne Sharp and all the people that were around. Super nice. It's beautiful to be able to know this story in a more personal and close way. So that's why she was asking. Her question at the beginning was about the legacy, because we are the next generation of people who are studying education, philosophy with children. And so how this book and how this new approach to Lipman changes our own approach, our own touch with the philosophy of children in Matthew Lipman's legacy. So I go on.
Ótimo.
So just we're gonna make a ping pong here. So
Okay.
two more points that we wanted to raise up. O terceiro ponto era, muito rapidamente, a gente está aqui um pouco no tempo, mas muito rapidamente, essa ideia do título, que já apareceu aqui, apareceu com a Karen, e é um pouco sobre essa ideia o título é muito bonito, né? A gente pensou como a gente traduziria, Life Teaching Thinking, ficou igual em português e em espanhol, uma vida ensinando a pensar, que tem mais de um sentido, quer dizer, significa uma vida ocupada na atividade de ensinar a pensar, uma vida ensinando a pensar, uma vida inteira ensinando a pensar. Um segundo sentido que seria uma vida que ensina ela própria a pensar, a life teaching. Mas uma que não é tão óbvia, e que a gente gostaria de trazer, é a ideia de uma vida, talvez seja um pouco estranho, mas uma vida ensinando que está a pensar. Isso é, uma vida ensinante que pensa ela própria. Então é como se, na verdade, lendo as páginas, a gente lesse não tanto Lipman pensando, mas essa vida ensinante pensando. A gente lê o pensamento que emerge de uma vida ensinante. Isso é muito bonito e a gente gostaria de chamar essa atenção, porque às vezes no livro o Lipman gasta um parágrafo, dois, ou um capítulo inteiro descrevendo algo, ou falando sobre algo que alguém mais desavisado poderia ler e pensar que não é muito importante. Um capítulo inteiro sobre a oficina do pai dele. E alguém poderia pensar, tá, mas o que que isso tem a ver com a filosofia com crianças? E a gente gostaria de sugerir ler com atenção, assim, para pensar que tipo de forças, que linhas. A gente deu uma discutida, eu e Carmina, mas é um texto filosófico? Será que esse é um texto filosófico? Independente disso, a gente gostaria de convidar as pessoas a lerem o livro de uma maneira filosófica, como Lippmann lia suas novelas e seus contos com as crianças. Ler para poder pensar a partir dessa vida.
Well, this is not going to be easy to translate.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. We're here for that. Danny was saying that the title is also very interesting to think about because, well, you know, it's a life teaching thinking in English, and, well, they remain very similar both in Spanish and in Portuguese. And they have like a little play of words going around. A ver, let's see if I get this right. We could understand it as a life busy in the duty of thinking, in the just thinking, a life that teaches herself how to think, well, to think, or I don't know how to say that. As a whole, that life as a whole shows us what is to think somehow. And another sense, it could be understood as a life. I think I'm saying the same thing here. It's showing that it thinks. Oh, well, a thinking life. I don't know. I guess it's philosophy. We don't know.
Like a teaching life that is thinking. Sorry.
Okay, that is thinking. All right. So with that in mind, Danny invites us to read all of the chapters with a philosophizing attitude, not just going through the words quickly, because it may seem that some chapters or paragraphs are irrelevant. They are not, Danny says. And so we can, well, read those parts in a philosophical way, trying to see what impressions those parts make on us, on our reading, on our thinking. Cool.
On our lives.
On our lives, yeah. Bueno, ahora cambiamos al español. Quiero agregar una cosa y cierro con lo otro, que es fascinante cómo la mayoría de las fotos de las actividades filosóficas del IAPC o de la filosofía con niños, para niños en general, siempre están llenas de sonrisas, y eso habla también de una manera de hacer filosofía que nos toca. Yo estoy convencida de que todas las personas que pasan por la filosofía con niños en serio no quedan iguales. La vida se transforma. Y en algún sentido, hay algo de esto en la vida misma de Lipman. Él empezó a trabajar en la filosofía para niños y en la filosofía de la educación cuando ya era grande, ya tenía una carrera muy empezada en su universidad, y así todo lo dejó atrás, tomó la decisión de cambiar su vida, él lo dice así, tuvo la sensación de que tenía que cambiar su vida y apostó de lleno al bueno, a este proyecto que fue un poco armando a medida que se iba desarrollando. Y nada, me parece muy valioso en un contexto de exitismo, donde se nos dice todo el tiempo que hay que ser exitoso, que hay que a los 25 años hay que saber lo que uno quiere hacer toda la vida y ser exitoso a los 26. Me parece de una actitud muy corajuda, muy valiente y muy poderosa también, ¿no? De apostar de lleno, no sé, no me acuerdo cuántos años tenía, 45, 50, no sé, apostó de lleno a la filosofía con niño, a lo que él lo apasionaba, a lo que era su compromiso por ahí más sentido de grande, bueno, y acá estamos en ese camino también.
E aí agora então, in English, sorry. So now, just for closing up, Carmi was saying that it's fascinating. She was looking at the pictures of the encounters, the trainings, and it's super interesting how everyone is always smiling. There's a lot of smiles in the pictures, and saying that that's a way of doing philosophy, of making thinking that changes people, that doesn't let people be the same throughout the process. So it's transforming, it's a changing philosophy, it's a changing way of doing philosophy. And you can see that on the pictures. And that's has to do with this idea of life teaching thinking or philosophy as a way of life. And she brought up the life of Lipman itself, and that met a turnaround. Lipman has already a career. He was working on something. He was a work in progress, and he made a decision to change roads, to change what he was doing, and change with that his own life. And he was already, I don't know, 45, 50 years old. So she was saying, in a context, in a world that revolves around success, like at 26 years old, you should have a job, you should have formation, you should have a family, you should have exit. You should be successful at 26 years old. Someone that changes his own life at that age is a very bold move. It's a sign of courage, and maybe that's something we can learn about this life teaching thinking also. And it's beautiful to see that, and you're gonna read it on the book. You're gonna be also moved by this turnaround. So yeah, that's it. We would like to thank you very, very much. Recommend you to download the book, read it. Super beautiful.
Enjoy it.
Great.
Muchas gracias, muito obrigado. Thank you so much, Daniel, Carmina, for the lovely work of translating and now for making us think about translation. Gracias por el excelente trabajo de traducción y ahora por hacernos pensar en lo que significa traducir. Y así como al comienzo teníamos la pregunta de cómo comenzar una celebración, ahora tenemos la pregunta de cómo terminar una celebración. As in the beginning we have the question of how to begin a celebration. Now we have the question of how to end the celebration. And so we decided to invite a child. Então decidimos convidar a uma criança. Y convidamos a David Kennedy. And we invited David Kennedy to say some final words for the celebration. Hi, David.
I can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that I would. I actually wrote a paper about Matt's autobiography, and I thought that I would read a bit from it in summary. Still pitching the book, right? As to see it, and then I'd like to share a song that Anne actually introduced to the community of inquiry, and that she called for a lot when she was facilitating sometimes. So I don't know if I can I share screen?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Can you see this? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this, I wanted to just point out a few things. I'll read this. Matt's book begins with memories of earliest childhood and his preoccupation with the possibility of being able to fly, which is a theme that runs through his story. Moves through the years in which his family struggled with the effects of the Great Depression through his service in the military. During World War II, he was actually present at the liberation of the camps, the concentration camps in Germany, and at a certain point decided that he wasn't going to load his rifle, so he became sort of a conscientious objector within the war itself. And luckily was appointed to be a clerk, so he didn't have to shoot at anybody. But he decided halfway through that he wasn't going to kill anybody who was not directly connected with Hitler and the SS, which is interesting. So there's this thread of integrity in his personal life as well as in his work. His discovery of the joy and beauty of philosophy, his academic rise at Columbia University, his Fulbright sojourn in Paris, his early and later career. And this is the part that I wanted to share. Lipman's educational project led in 4 related directions. The practice of philosophy for children being the first, which he invented, and which presents an epistemological challenge to a second field, philosophy of education, which is as startling as was Rousseau's 200 years before. And third, it led to a realm of theory called philosophy of childhood, upon which the practice of philosophy for children was a kind of action meditation, prompting adults as it does to reflect on children's differences from and similarities to adults at the same time and in the same discursive space. If you're hearing what sounds like an air raid siren, it's somebody sanding the outside of my voice.
No.
Yeah. Finally, his praxis also implicitly challenged those accounts of children's philosophies, paradigmatically represented by Piaget's work, which represent childhood epistemology as evidence for various genetic and epigenetic stage-based theories of cognitive development. The consequences for education of this confluence was a methodology that serves as a bridge between the 2 most influential philosophers of education of the 20th century, John Dewey and Paulo Freire.
David, we can hear you now.
You can? You cannot?
Yeah, we can.
The educational praxis that emerged from his venture, for all its apparent simplicity, operationalizes a post-colonial standpoint epistemology vis-a-vis childhood and children, pulls the linchpin that holds in place the school as ideological state apparatus, and empowers the elementary classroom as a primary site for democratic theory and practice. So that's kind of a summary from me. I think that thinking about the sort of about the emancipatory implications of his work, which is being actually carried forward in this what is called the childism movement. I'm going to read. No, I guess I'm not going to read that. I'm competing with our house painter. I just want to share that I had the honor of visiting Matt in his last days in a home for senior citizens in Montclair. For about a year, I went to see him every weekend and stayed there for about in his one relatively small, well, it wasn't that small, but his one room, kind of like a motel room, in which he spent the last couple of years of his life, sort of slowly declining with Parkinson's. But anybody wanted me to stop and translate, let me know. No? Okay, yeah, so he never lost that sort of incredible eyes, right? Which you can see, you can see them in the photographs, which is just a sort of radiance and the sort of gentle smile, which never really left him, right? And he was accompanied, of course. He had Karen came to see him regularly, I think, but she was living in North Carolina or something, so she didn't come every week. He was accompanied by a number of cats. He loved cats, right? He had one in his office in the greenhouse for years. Her name was Ellie, and he was very fond of her. He would feed her in the kitchen and so on. And at this rest home, he had 4 or 5 cats because he was hallucinating cats. Like he said, "Oh, there's a cat over there, and a cat there, and there." And he knew it was a hallucination, but it also was not a hallucination. It was somehow these cats were accompanying him, right? They were keeping, and they were small cats, like kittens. The last time I went to see him, he got so enthusiastic. He said, "And that cat over there by the bed is my favorite," or something. And I said, "I don't see a cat." I mean, I never went along with it, right? I said, "I don't see it," but that didn't mean anything to him. So he said, "Oh, let me show you." And he sat in this big sort of chair, comfortable chair the whole time. But he started to get up and "Here, let me show you where the cat is," and to walk towards the cat. And he got halfway there and started to collapse. And I caught him and moved him back to the chair. This was, for some reason, this is one of the most moving events of my life. But there was a quality about him in death. Of course, he knew that he was very close, and a quality that I want to read a passage from Seneca that, for me, sort of embodies his approach to his own death. This is what is great, Seneca writes, is a steadfast soul, serene in adversity, a soul that accepts every event as if it were desired. What is great is to remember that one is human. It is when one is happy, saying to oneself that one will not be happy for long. What is great is having one's soul at one's lips, ready. Then one is free, and not by the laws of the city, but by the laws of nature. And for me, he embodies that quote. So Walter's asked me whether there was any piece of music that I knew of that that was in some way connected with Matt. And I have to admit that I was not aware of any musical connections with Matt, although I have the vague, probably false memory that he loved the Beethoven's last quartets. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but there was one piece of music which was introduced by Anne, a Quaker hymn, which we sang several times at Mendham, and she would pull it. Mon, you remember it, I would guess. Yeah. So what I'd like to do to finish out is to play a rendition of the song, a beautiful rendition by Judy Collins, and then sing it ourselves, if that's okay with everybody. So, Walter, you want to put up the, yeah.
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we are in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we will not be ashamed. To turn, 'twill be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Okay, now can I put the words up, or do you have them? Yeah, I think it's him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we ready?
Yep.
How's this? Tis the gift
to be simple.
Tis the gift to be
free.
Tis the gift
to come down where we ought to be.
And
when we are in the place just right, it will be in the valley of love and delight.
When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shall not be ashamed. But to turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear friends. Thank you all. Thank you all who have been here with us celebrating 100 years of Matthew Lipman.
Yeah.
And yes, David?
Beautiful. Beautiful production. So professional.
Thank you all. Gracias a todos, gracias a todas. Obrigado a todo mundo. Obrigado a Felipe, Robson, que trabalharam aqui no NEFI na produção. E obrigado a todo mundo e obrigado a Matthew Lipman por ter começado um mundo novo para todos nós.
And thank you,
for
Walter,
Matthew
for bringing us together.